So I do want to dive into some stuff outside of this book topic, which I thought was a fascinating opening that I wasn't anticipating. Lee, can you just give really quickly, and it's for my own benefit too, because I'm not quite as familiar with your background prior to Variant. Um, you mentioned that you had studied English literature, and we're very into reading fiction your whole life. Like, what did you study? Where did you kind of end up in school? How did you get started in the venture industry? How did you break into that? And then I want to dive into, like, you kind of founded the creator economy. You're like the you were kind of the first writer that I remember reading talking about it. And I think you coined the term probably. So I'd love to get there, but maybe we can just set the stage with a little bit on your background.
For sure. So, starting from the very beginning, I'm from Beijing. I grew up there for the first 6 years of my life. Then, my family and I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania when I
Huh.
was 6 years old.
Why
My,
Pittsburgh?
my dad was doing his PhD in Pittsburgh
Oh, at Carnegie Mellon?
at Pitt, at the
Oh,
University
okay,
of
Pitt,
Pittsburgh.
cool.
hmm
That was my dad's first job, was at Carnegie Mellon. So that's why I was asking. My parents lived
Oh,
in Pittsburgh for many years.
yeah. Well, the backstory was really that my mother was in love with America and American values and freedom and all of that, and really, really wanted us to move to America. And back then in the 90s, really the only way to immigrate legally from China to America was through education. And so the PhD was like a stepping stone for us to come here. But, anyways, so then we moved here, didn't speak a word of English, learned it in school. Um, Really, yeah, saw every layer of American society, because when we moved here, we were living in the inner city of Pittsburgh. I went to public school, didn't know English, learned it through ESL, and then gradually we moved out of the city into the suburbs, where I went to high school, and then I went to college at Harvard. I like to say that Harvard plucked me out of obscurity from southwestern Pennsylvania, um, and really brought me into this environment that was really life changing and transformative for me. And initially, when I first got there, I thought I wanted to be a writer of some sort, either of books and novels, or to be a journalist. So I threw myself into that. I spent 40 hours a week writing for the Harvard Crimson.
Wow.
I was an English literature major, and then gradually I was made aware that, well, actually, what happened was that my mother called me one day and she was like, it's very hard to make a living as a writer. You should study something else. She said this much more harshly, but that was the sentiment. She meant well. Her
This is
real
like the
words.
immigrant mother thing. My mom does the same thing. Like, she still thinks it's ridiculous that I didn't go to medical school and become a doctor. Like my Indian mother, Indian immigrant mother. It's definitely an immigrant parent thing.
It definitely, she was like, if you look at the job postings on a newspaper, where do you see the listings for author? There is none. Like, there are no jobs for you. So please study something else where you can support yourself. Like, financial matters were very top of mind given their backgrounds. So, anyways, long story short, I then decided to study statistics, and that is what I graduated with. So I pivoted 180 degrees. Um, and then years later, I found myself in Silicon Valley working at a startup that built mobile apps that were tailored towards retailers and brands and rewarded users for walking into physical retail stores. And then that company got acquired, and then I went to go work at Andreessen Horowitz. So that was my entree into the venture
Got it.
world. And I really didn't know that much about venture when I joined. I actually cold applied to Andreessen Horowitz on the website as a last
Huh.
ditch attempt to not have to go to business school, which is a whole other story. Um, I didn't want to go to business school, but I had applied, and I didn't. I felt like at that age, at that point of my life, that I ought to basically move on from my previous job, but I wasn't sure what to do, and so I applied to business school, but I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to take myself out of the workforce, so I
I think
decided to
that's
apply.
most people, by the way. I think like business school is like the it's like the uncertainty pick where like people aren't willing to tolerate the like uncertainty of what comes next at that first pivot point in their career, and business school is like the easy answer. Like there's some people
Right.
obviously that
It's like
really
a
want to go to business school and there's a specific reason, but it's a very like reputable thing that your parents will never get mad. No one will ever like ding
yeah,
you for going to
it's like
business
a
school.
socially acceptable way to wander around in the wilderness and figure
That's a
yourself
good way
out.
of putting it.
Yeah. So that's how I felt it at the time, and then I cold applied to Andreessen, which by the way is like not the not how you're supposed to go about getting a
I
job
didn't know
in
you could do
venture.
that.
I didn't know that there was other ways of getting jobs. This was how naive and innocent I was in my early 20s. I thought that people just applied to jobs and that's how they got them. I didn't know about warm introductions and
Mm.
referrals and all of that. So, anyways, to my surprise, someone actually writes me back. This is Frank Chen, who is is one of the people who works at A16Z still, and he writes me back and he's like, "Hey, you should come in and like come chat with me." So I drive over to their office, which is very close to where I'm living at the time, and have a conversation with him, and that kicks off a 7 month long process
Oh
in which
God.
I basically go over to their office every week, have a conversation, meet with
Wow.
other people, and finally after 7 months, I get the job and I join the consumer investment team.
Huh.
And this is fall of 2016. I end up staying for 4 years, much longer than I had anticipated. I thought that I would stay for 1 or 2 years, go back to product, but
Well,
I stay for 4 years.
after a 7 month recruiting process, you got to stay for you're like for at least 2 years. Is that there's got to be
Right,
something there.
exactly.
That's
The
like you
ratio
know
of like,
now I think they hire anyone that just says crypto in their Twitter bio. Sorry if you're listening.
oh my God.